So today I would like to talk about success, but perhaps in a way that is unexpected. There are many programs available and many teachers available that produce very good material and good formulas for success. And those formulas are really based upon doing. The things that we need to put in place in order to run a small business, or the things that we need to put in place in terms of realizing our potentials, or to get clear about what it is that we want to do in the world. So there are lots of programs for that, and there are lots of teachers to help us with that. And much of it, not all of it, but much of it is very valuable. And there are many valuable tools out there. However, what I want to talk about are generally the topics that are not considered, or perhaps there's even an aversion to really looking at in terms of the whole subject of success. And the first one is failure. It is the opposite side of the coin to success. And what does failure really mean? And what is the weightiness that is behind failure? What is the fear behind failure? One of the things that I've noticed, that in order for us, me, you, anyone to be successful at anything, there has to be a willingness to become visible. And with visibility comes vulnerability. And with vulnerability comes the risk of shame being exposed. Shame being exposed. Very often our shameful secret is shame itself. It is not the thing that we think that we've done, but it is the fact that we hold shame. We don't want anyone to see that we actually have shame. And our bigger fear around shame, the very big fear around having shame, is that once it is exposed, that somebody else would say, well, yes, you should of course feel ashamed of that. The shaming process with human beings, with all of us, started at a very young age. It is my belief that there are very few people on this planet who deliberately set out to hurt and shame others. Most of it comes from a place of not being conscious, and there are certain aspects of societal shaming or cultural shaming that are expected. In the West, we come from this Judeo-Christian tradition that teaches us that we are born in sin, and therefore the shaming that has been fed to us, that's been given to us over many generations over the past 1500, 2000 years, has come down to us from the pulpits. That we've been told that we are unworthy and undeserving. And in fact, being kept small and being unworthy has been sold to us as a virtue that will bring us the blessings of God or guarantee us a place in heaven. So shaming has become very much a part of Western culture. Then there are the images around gender and gender identity and masculinity and femininity that also bring shame. It is very clear that in times gone by, and it's still present today, that the birth of a boy is often celebrated far more than the birth of the girl. So what does that tell young women? What does that tell girls? It tells them already that they're less important. Then the deeper question comes, why am I less important? Well, there must be something wrong with me. And then we come back to the religious images of girls who are expected to be mothers and virgins at the same time. For we have the image of the Virgin Mary and of the sacred and clean woman that's been passed down through many generations. And so shaming does not only get passed on from individual to individual, from parent to child, from grandparents to grandchild, from aunts and uncles to niece and nephew, but also from society as a whole. And so shaming takes place in terms of body shape, body size, our clothing, our appearance, our femininity, our masculinity. Boys are told big boys don't cry. And so a lot of shaming takes place in terms of men who express feelings. A lot of women say, I want to have a man who's in touch with his feelings. And in reality, that's not entirely true. What's really being expressed there, I want to have a man who's in touch with my feelings. because the woman wants to be understood for her own emotional makeup. And so there is this hesitance to allow men to have vulnerability. And so that forbidding of vulnerability with men is also transgenerational. And it's important to understand the transgenerational aspects of that, because we've had many, many generations of war. For example, in Europe, this has been the longest peacetime period that we've had in 1,000 years. Take that in. This is the longest peacetime period we've had in 1,000 years. So generation after generation after generation after generation of men have gone off to war, seen their friends, their comrades, their brothers, their fathers, their uncles, and their sons die on the battlefield. So what is the coping mechanism there? To become numb. And so vulnerability was seen as a weakness, which of course, if you're on the battlefield, there is no room for vulnerability. But it has become so ingrained, it's even within the DNA. The story is passed on of hold, hold, hold. Don't react, don't respond. This is a way to survive. And then of course, in those previous generations, there are the women who have stayed at home, whilst the men who've gone off to war. And so the men who don't come home, the sons who don't come home. And then on top of that, there was the high instance of infant mortality. So the women are also overwhelmed with grief. And so vulnerability has been equated to survival. If I'm vulnerable, I may not survive. If I'm vulnerable, I may even die. And so vulnerability takes a lot of courage. A lot of courage. And so there is a lot of shame that's being held within our systems with regards to vulnerability. And so here we are wanting to become a success in whatever field that we've chosen, whether it's medicine, whether it's art, whether it's communication, whether it's being a writer, being some kind of creator, or in business, whatever it is that we want to do, or to have a successful relationship. But the thing that is required for success, in order to allow the juices of your creativity to flow, is visibility. And where there's visibility, there's vulnerability. And where there is vulnerability, there is the very, very great risk that shame will be exposed. And so how do we work with this? Well, first of all, we need to have a very, very healthy relationship to being wrong. Most of us are afraid of being wrong. So one of the things that I've learned as a teacher and public speaker is to be able to say to my audience or say to my client, I don't know. Or say, sorry, I could have said that to you differently. What I was wanting to say was this. I'm sorry if that came across as being a little harsh. Or sorry, I gave you the wrong information. Most of us do not have a healthy relationship to being wrong. We want to defend our rightness. But when we have a healthy relationship to being wrong, it also means that we can have a healthy relationship to look at, entertain, to be with our own shame. So to uncover that even further, even after we've developed a healthier relationship to being wrong, there's an invitation here. And the invitation is to not dig, not tell a story about the shame, not trying to figure it out, not trying to figure out who did it to you. Was it mom? Was it dad? Was it the priest? Was it the rabbi? Was it whoever? But simply to stop. Simply to stop and ask yourself, if there was one feeling, one main feeling, without telling too much of, once we get into too much of a story about it, then we know we're not in the main feeling. So that's always an indication. If there's a long explanation, then we know that it's not the real thing. Because truth is extremely simple. And with simple truth, there are very few words, very few descriptors. So if there's one feeling that perhaps you have been running from your entire life, what is it? And if you're sitting in your mind saying, what is it, what is it, what is it, then you're not going to get towards the feeling. And so once that has been identified, then the next thing is to do nothing. Really nothing. That, talking about doing nothing, particularly on a video that's talking about success, because everybody wants to do success, everyone wants to become successful. It is the antithesis of success, is to do nothing. But the invitation here is to stop running. Because you want success, you want to build up a business, you want to go out to the world as a writer, as an artist, as a chef, as a creative of great new technologies. You want to be able to create new and wonderful friendships, you want to create a new relationship, you want to create a family, you want to create something, you want to be an architect, whatever it is that you long to do. It doesn't matter whether you want to be a baker or a candlestick maker, it's irrelevant. And so there's an urge there to create something, and yet I'm saying, do nothing. For what needs to be felt here, what needs to be really truly felt and understood, is that all of that creativity that you want to express is a natural part of life force energy. However, when we look at the shameful thing, the shameful object, that feeling that says, I'm bad, I'm ugly, I'm unwanted, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, whatever that I am statement is, if that is hiding in the shadows of shame, it takes a lot of life force energy to keep that in place. Perhaps even half of your life force energy, or perhaps even more than that. And so if we simply stop, if we stop investing all of that energy in keeping the shameful thing hidden, how much more creative energy will you have available to you for all the things that you want to create? So you want to be a writer, you want to be a chef, you want to run a multi-million-dollar business, you want to be an architect, you want to build homes, you want to design dresses, you want to own a chain of bakery stores, you want to have a loving relationship and raise 3 or 4 children. Where is your creative energy now? You could say, yes, well, it's wasted in a dead-end job. Well, why are you in the dead-end job? It's because your energy is invested in keeping the secret shame hidden. And it requires a lot of life force energy to keep that in place, to keep it in the shadow. And so when we simply stop, turn, and face the monster, I often use the analogy of Little Red Riding Hood. She's running through the forest and shame is running behind her, or the belief of I'm bad, I'm ugly, I'm not wanted, or whatever it might be. I'm not good enough, or there's something wrong with me. There is something wrong with me. That's the big bad wolf that's chasing her all the time while she's running through the dark forest at nighttime. Who's winning? Who is winning? It's the wolf who's winning. But if she stops in her tracks, absolutely stops in her tracks, turns and faces the big bad wolf, might be frightening at first. It's growling, it's got fangs, it's foaming at the mouth. Stop and do nothing. We're often told that with wild animals, with bears and other animals like that, if they charge at us, or gorillas charge at us, is to do nothing, not to run, because then they will win. They will run and take us down. It's the same with our inner shame. The longer we run, the more power it has, and then the more energy we have to use to run, and to run, and to run, and to run, and to run. And eventually we will lose our strength, we will be depleted of energy, and then the shame wins. And then that shame has won once we get towards the end of our lives, having regretted the life we did not live, having regret around the life that we never had the courage to live. That is when shame wins. And so what would it be like to get to the end of your life where there is the list of regret of all the things that you did not do? And so all we're talking about here is about having the courage to stop and face shame. And that is by doing nothing. My clients come to me and say, well, I have this problem, I want to get rid of it. And I say, let's not get rid of it. And then they're outraged, even afraid of that. Well, you don't want to fix it, you don't want to heal me? Well, yes I do, but I'm going to help you heal by teaching you how to do nothing, to simply face what is there. And that is the only way that I've found to transcend it. Because each time we try to fix, we try to analyze, we want to categorize, we want to get rid of it, we want to pave over it with a new mental technique, we're actually giving it more energy. And consciousness, the soul, the heart, the awakening of the heart, the awakening of consciousness, the awakening of the soul, or whatever words that you want to use to describe this great pilgrimage that we're on to the single and only important destination, which is our very own heart, it is relentless. So what needs to happen in order for us to face the shame that is draining all of our life force energy? Sometimes we have to lose a job. Sometimes our husband or wife or boyfriend or partner walks out on us. Sometimes we lose everything that we've owned. Sometimes we lose houses and cars and great sums of money. Sometimes we lose all of our friends. Sometimes the roof comes crashing down on us. Because all of our life force energy has been used up in keeping this one place of shame and self-hatred in place. But once we meet it, once we actually meet it, what we discover is the most tender and innocent part of ourselves that simply wants to be free, to love and to be loved. That's the greatest freedom that it seeks. And once that is realized, once we realize the truth of who we are, then all of that we wish to create, irrespective of what it is, whether it's cakes or candles, whether it's industry or architecture, or whether it's motherhood or fatherhood, whatever it is, then starts to take on the qualities of magnificence and radiance. Because the creation is not coming from a place of, if I do this very well, then you will love me. It comes as an extension of the love of who we are. And that is true success. That is true success. There are very successful people in the world who have great financial success who do not radiate from the heart. And there are those who do. For they do not only what they love to do, but they're also willing to look at themselves and to look at the true, real underlying causes of the failures that they have faced. There is no success without failure. And within failure, to uncover, to work with that, to accept failure as the path towards success, we must be willing to face shame and to be vulnerable and to face the worst lies that we've ever told about ourselves. And so tied up in success is inner work. It is inner work. It is a willingness to look at what is it that we've been running from? What is it that you have been running from? And so that's part of the work that I love to do with people. More later. Thank you.